The air was thick with the scent of jasmine and champagne, but all I could feel was the weight of their stares. I'd come to the Grand Ivory, my mother's birthday gala, hoping for a moment of connection, maybe even a flicker of the family I used to know. But as I stepped onto the polished marble steps, my sister Rachel's voice cut through the chatter like a blade. "Emily? You actually showed up?" Her words dripped with disdain, each syllable a reminder of where I stood in their eyes. Nowhere. Nobody. Not worth the space I took up. I smoothed the modest gray dress I'd chosen, my fingers brushing the delicate necklace my grandmother left me, its weight grounding me against the rising tide of shame. Rachel stood at the entrance, flawless in her designer gown, a glass of golden wine in hand. She tilted her head, her smile sharp enough to draw blood. "This isn't a place for people like you, Emily," she said, loud enough for the cousins, aunts, and uncles nearby to hear. "Mom wants successful people at her table tonight. Not, whatever you are." The crowd shifted, some smirking, others looking away, but no one spoke. No one dared. My throat tightened, but I wouldn't let them see me break. "I just want to wish Mom a happy birthday," I said, my voice steady despite the ice sliding under my skin. Rachel's eyes flicked to my flats, then the fraying necklace, her laugh a cruel punctuation. "You're not on the list," she declared, gesturing to the host. He fumbled with his iPad, his face apologetic but firm. "I'm sorry, ma'am. No reservation under Harper." Behind me, my cousin Lisa's husband barely hid his grin. Even Uncle Mark, who once slipped me candy at Christmas, stared at his shoes. I could feel the stairs beneath me, each step a pull back to the shadows I'd fought so hard to escape. Rachel leaned in, her voice a venomous whisper. "Maybe next year, if you ever amount to anything." The words burned, but I held my chin high, ready to turn away, to leave their perfect little world untouched. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. But something inside me refused to let this be the end. This wasn't just a gala. It was a stage, and Rachel thought she'd written the script. She didn't know I'd been rewriting my story for years, in silence, in struggle, in ways they'd never see coming. As I took that first step back, a spark flickered in me, not anger, not revenge, but resolve. They thought they could erase me, but they were about to learn who I really was. And it started with the truth they never bothered to look for. The sting of Rachel's words at the Grand Ivory wasn't new. It was an old wound, carved deep in the quiet corners of my childhood, in a New England home where love was a currency you earned. I was the youngest Harper, always trailing behind my sisters, my footsteps too soft to echo in a family obsessed with being loud, being seen. Growing up, I thought family meant Sunday mornings with pancakes dripping syrup, laughter spilling over the table like sunlight. But by the time I was 10, I learned the truth: love wasn't given, it was performed. You were either a trophy to be polished or a shadow to be ignored. My sisters, Rachel especially, were the golden ones. Rachel, with her perfect smile and sharper ambition, was the daughter my parents paraded at dinner parties, her achievements a script they memorized. Me? I was the quiet one, the one who read too much, dreamed too small, or so they thought. I tried to shine in my own way, science fairs, late night studying, a scholarship to college, but it was never enough. At family dinners, Susan, my mother, would beam as Rachel recounted her latest triumph, her voice filling the room. I'd sit there, fork in hand, waiting for a glance, a question, anything. It rarely came. "Emily's just Emily," Susan once said, her tone light but heavy with dismissal. The table laughed. I didn't. By my 20s, I'd carved a place for myself at a Boston firm, building strategies, winning clients, believing I could rewrite my role in the Harper story. But markets shift, and so do loyalties. When the layoffs hit, I was out, no severance, no safety net. I packed my life into a suitcase and a duffel bag, my bank account a pitiful $43.17. I called home, just once, hoping for a lifeline. Rachel answered, her voice cool, almost amused. "Yikes, Emily, that's rough," she said. "Maybe this is your chance to learn some humility." Her laugh was a door slamming shut. I hung up, my hands shaking, and booked a one-way ticket to Portland, Oregon. If New England couldn't hold me, I'd find somewhere that could. Portland was gray and unfamiliar, a city that didn't know my name or my failures. I rented a cramped room near the airport, the kind that smelled of stale coffee and regret. I took a job at a 2-star hotel, working the night desk, my uniform scratching my skin, the guests rarely tipping. But I watched everything: how rooms were priced, how a single bad review could sink a week's bookings. I learned the pulse of the place, the math of survival. Within months, I wasn't just checking guests in, I was running payroll, cutting food waste, suggesting changes that made the staff's work smoother. I didn't complain. I didn't break. I built. One morning, a silver-haired guest, a man who'd stayed a month under a fake name, handed me a card as he checked out. "You're why this place didn't fold," he said, his eyes sharp with something I couldn't name. That card led to a lunch, then a meeting with a retired venture capitalist named Whitman. He saw what my family never did, a mind that didn't need applause to work. He offered me a deal: silent partner in a hotel turnaround, no spotlight, just equity and effort. I said yes. By year 2, we had 5 properties. By year 3, 15. The Grand Ivory, the glittering stage where Rachel tried to erase me, was mine, property 6. I never put my name on the brochures. I didn't need to. I needed distance, not validation. But distance doesn't erase memory. I kept my family at arm's length: birthday cards, holiday calls to Susan, nothing more. They didn't ask about my life, and I didn't tell. So when that group text landed last week, a generic invite to Susan's gala at the Grand Ivory, no name, just a photo of clinking champagne glasses, I should have ignored it. It wasn't for me, not really. But something stirred, a stubborn hope, maybe, or just exhaustion from standing in the shadows. I stared at the message, my thumb hovering over the screen. I could stay away, let them have their perfect night, their perfect lie. Or I could go, not to beg for a seat, but to remind myself who I'd become. I chose the latter. Not for them, but for me. I'd walk into their world, not as the Emily they dismissed, but as the one they'd never seen. The one who'd built an empire while they were busy polishing their own. And as I slipped on that gray dress, tied my grandmother's necklace around my neck, I felt it, a quiet strength, a spark they couldn't snuff out. They thought they knew my story. They were wrong. The Grand Ivory glittered like a dream I wasn't meant to touch. Its chandeliers cast a glow that turned the marble floors into mirrors, reflecting every insecurity I'd carried through the years. I'd come to my mother Susan's birthday gala not to prove anything, but to see her, to say the words I hadn't in too long: happy birthday. I'd chosen a simple gray dress, nothing flashy, just me. Around my neck hung my grandmother's necklace, its fraying chain a quiet tether to the woman who'd once told me I was enough. But as I climbed the stone steps, the weight of my family's judgment pressed harder than the cool evening air. Rachel was there, poised at the entrance like a queen guarding her court. Her designer gown shimmered, her wine glass catching the light as she laughed with the host. Then she saw me. Her eyes swept from my flats to the necklace, her smile twisting into something sharp, something meant to cut. "Emily," she said, her voice loud enough to hush the crowd nearby. "You came?" It wasn't a question, it was a challenge. I forced a polite smile, my heart steady despite the familiar sting. "The invite said 7, I replied, keeping my tone even. Rachel's eyebrow arched, her gaze lingering on my outfit like it was an insult. "Right," she drawled, leaning toward the host. She whispered something, then turned back, her voice louder, deliberate. "This isn't a place for struggling types, Emily. Mom wants successful people tonight." The words landed like ice, cold and heavy, slipping under my skin. The cousins by the bar shifted, their whispers a soft hum of agreement. My cousin Lisa's husband smirked, not even bothering to hide it. Uncle Mark, who'd once shared secret candies at Christmas, stared at the floor. I exhaled quietly, lifting my chin. I just want to say happy birthday to her, I said, my voice clear, unshaken. Rachel's theatrical sigh filled the silence. She's not on the list, she announced, waving a hand at the host. He glanced at his iPad, his face tight with discomfort. I'm sorry, ma'am, he mumbled. No reservation under Harper. The stairs behind me felt like a pull, a current dragging me back to the shadows I'd clawed my way out of. Rachel leaned closer, her voice dripping with false pity. Maybe next year, if things turn around for you. Her words were a dismissal, a final erasure. I opened my mouth, then closed it. There was no point arguing with someone who'd already rewritten me as nothing. My throat tightened, but I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of tears. I turned, ready to walk away, to let them keep their polished lies. But then a voice cut through the tension, firm and deep, like a crack in their perfect facade. Excuse me. We all turned. James Carter, the head of security, stood a few feet away, his tailored black suit as commanding as his presence. I knew him, months ago, he'd helped me escort a rowdy investor out of an event in this very hotel. Now his eyes flicked between me and the host, confusion hardening into recognition. He squinted, then straightened, his voice carrying a weight that silenced the room. Madam CEO, he said, his tone unmistakable. We weren't informed you were arriving tonight. The air vanished. A hush fell, sharp and sudden, like someone had unplugged the entire gala. Rachel's glass trembled in her hand, the wine sloshing faintly. The host stammered, his face paling. I apologize, he said, tripping over his words. Please, forgive me. I didn't know. I adjusted the necklace at my throat, its familiar weight steadying me. I met Rachel's eyes, her shock a mirror to the truth she'd never bothered to see. Let them enjoy their dinner, I said calmly, my voice cutting through the gasps. I'll be upstairs in my suite. I stepped past the velvet rope, past the pitying glances and smug silences, feeling the shift in the room. They thought they knew me, poor Emily, the failure, the invisible daughter. But I wasn't that girl anymore. I was the one who'd built this place, every chandelier, every marble tile, every dream they stood on. As I walked toward the private elevator, I caught a glimpse of something that made my stomach twist. A thick folder, passed discreetly from Rachel's purse to Lisa's husband, labeled in my father Richard's handwriting. It wasn't just a gala. It was a transaction, a secret they didn't want me to see. I didn't look back. The chandeliers still sparkled behind me, their light a faint echo of Rachel's laughter, but I kept moving. The truth was mine now, and it was heavier than any insult they'd thrown. They'd tried to erase me, but they'd only shown me who they really were. And I was just getting started. The elevator doors slid shut, sealing me away from the glittering lies of the Grand Ivory's gala. I stood alone, the hum of the ascent matching the pulse in my chest. Rachel's words still echoed, too poor, struggling, not on the list, but they didn't break me. They couldn't. Not anymore. I'd built this hotel, this empire, from the ashes of a life they'd written off. As the doors opened to my private suite, I loosened the necklace at my throat, my grandmother's chain a reminder of who I'd always been. I didn't need their approval. I needed the truth, and what I'd seen downstairs, that folder slipping from Rachel's purse to my cousin's husband, told me this night was about more than a birthday. It was a deal, a betrayal, and I wasn't supposed to witness it. I set the necklace on the marble table, its frayed edges soft under my fingers, and poured a cup of green tea from the sweets kettle. The city sparkled below, a world I'd claimed piece by piece. 6 years ago, I was nobody to them, a name they barely spoke. I'd lost my job at a Boston firm, a place I'd poured my soul into, only to be cut loose when the market turned. No severance, no goodbye, just a suitcase and $43.17 to my name. I called home, desperate for a lifeline. Rachel answered, her voice a blade wrapped in silk. Yikes, Emily, that's rough, she said, laughing. Maybe it's time you learned humility. I didn't cry. I booked a ticket to Portland, Oregon, because staying in New England felt like drowning in their disappointment. Portland was cold, unfamiliar, a city that didn't care who I'd been. I rented a room near the airport, the kind with thin walls and a faint smell of Lysol. I took a job at a budget hotel, working nights, my uniform stiff, the guests indifferent. But I watched. I learned how to price rooms, rotate linens, survive on grit. I didn't just work the desk, I ran payroll, cut food waste by 40%, made changes that kept the place afloat. One morning, a guest, a quiet man with silver hair, handed me a card as he left. "You're the reason this didn't fold," he said. That card led to Whitman, a retired venture capitalist with a hunger for turnarounds. He saw what my family never did, a mind that thrived in the shadows. He offered me a deal, silent partner, no fanfare, just work. I said yes. 2 years later, we had 5 hotels. 3 years, 15. The Grand Ivory, where Rachel had tried to erase me, was property 6. I kept my name off the brochures, my face out of the spotlight. I didn't need their applause. I needed distance. But distance didn't shield me from their schemes. That folder I'd seen wasn't a mistake. It was a move in a game I hadn't agreed to play. I sipped my tea, the steam curling like a question. What were they hiding? And why did it feel like they'd been planning this long before tonight? The answer came faster than I expected. By morning, my phone buzzed with a security alert. Someone had tried accessing Ivory Legacy Hotel's shareholder files, using an old login tied to my father's firm. I didn't need to guess who. Rachel's patterns were as predictable as her ambition. She thought she could dig into my world, find a crack to exploit. But the system was smarter. The moment she opened a restricted file, the server locked, pinging my legal team. Marcus, my counsel, called, his voice tight but amused. "She used her maiden name," he said. "Guess she doesn't learn." I smiled faintly, staring at the audit log on my iPad. "Log it," I told him. "Let's see what she does next." Rachel didn't stop there. She was scrambling, her control slipping like sand. I heard her voice later that day, faint but sharp, carried through the lobby's elevator shaft as I passed. She was on the phone, barking orders to her PR team. "There's been confusion," she snapped. The venue wasn't owned. It was booked through family channels. Phrase it that way. No mention of her name. This isn't about her. Her voice dropped, venomous. I don't care who she thinks she is. Just release it. I leaned against the wall, letting her words float past. They didn't hurt. They couldn't. I was past that. Rachel didn't care about truth, she cared about winning. But she was playing a game I'd already mastered. The press release went live by noon, a polished lie on 3 local news sites. It erased me, claiming the gala was just a family event at a prestigious downtown location. No owner, no Emily Harper. It might have worked a year ago, but not now. My comms team pinged me, their message calm but pointed. "We're being misrepresented," they said. "Do you want to respond?" I hesitated, then said, yes. 90 minutes later, Ivory Legacy Hotels issued a statement, simple and undeniable. The founder and primary shareholder of the Grand Ivory remains Emily Harper. All operations, including last night's event, were under her oversight. My name, no drama, just truth. The internet erupted. By afternoon, I was trending, not for revenge, but for clarity. Rachel's world was cracking, but she wasn't done. She'd always been slippery, finding angles where others saw walls. I should have seen it coming, but I didn't. Not until the charity auction at Willow Haven, our boutique hotel restored from my grandfather's design. It was a quiet event, local vendors, soft music, a cause for clean water. I was there to shake hands, smile, and leave. But then I saw him. Nathan Reed. My ex. His collar was still crisp, his walk still confident, like every room belonged to him. But there was a flicker in his eyes when he saw me, a hesitation I might have imagined. Emily, he said, my name soft on his lips, like it still meant something. I heard about your success. I'm proud of you. I didn't blink. I nodded, polite but distant, like he was a stranger in a checkout line. Thank you, I said, my voice flat. He kept talking, his eyes softening, the way they used to before he'd ask for forgiveness. You've done well. Look at this place. He gestured, but I didn't follow. My focus was inward, tightening. Nathan knew the old me, the one who doubted every step, who cried in stairwells, who believed love could fix a broken heart. I straightened, my smile a shield. Enjoy the event, I said, turning away. But my gut churned. Why was he here? Now? The answer came the next day. My counsel forwarded an email, caught by a paralegal archiving old correspondence. It was from Rachel to Nathan, sent weeks ago. She's emotionally fragile around you, it read. A few words could throw her off. Remind her who she was. Do this, and I'll keep your past buried. I stared at the screen, not angry, not shocked, just tired. So that was it. Not a coincidence, but a plan. Rachel couldn't win on paper, so she weaponized my heart. I deleted Nathan's number, not just from my phone, but from my memory, my future, the part of me that once believed in him. I didn't confront her. I didn't need to. But as I sat in my suite, the city quiet below, I knew this wasn't the end. Rachel was desperate, and desperate people don't stop, they double down. The city lights pulsed below my suite, but inside, the silence was louder. Rachel's schemes, her press lies, her attempt to dig into my company's files, sending Nathan to rattle me, hadn't broken me. They'd only sharpened my resolve. I thought I'd seen the worst of her, the depths she'd sink to keep me invisible. But I was wrong. The deepest cut was yet to come, and it wouldn't come from Rachel. It would come from the one person I still hoped might see me. My mother, Susan. I sat by the window, the weight of the gala and Nathan's reappearance still heavy in my chest. My phone lay face down, ignored, until it buzzed with a name I hadn't seen in years. Susan. I stared at the screen, my thumb frozen. How long had it been since I'd heard her voice? Months? Years? I couldn't pin it down without a calendar, and that alone stung. I answered, bracing for whatever came next. Hi, sweetheart, she said, her voice trembling, not with weakness but with a control I knew too well. I saw the press. I didn't know how much you've been through. I didn't know what you've done. I'm sorry. Her words hit like rain after a drought, warm and disorienting. I closed my eyes, letting them wash over me, wanting to believe them. Part of me still remembered her braiding my hair as a child, humming an old song from her own youth, the scent of her lavender perfume lingering. Part of me wanted to trust that she meant it. Would you meet me for lunch? She asked. Just the two of us, like we used to. I didn't say yes right away. I didn't say no either. I just held the phone, the silence stretching like a tightrope. Finally, I agreed, not because I was sure, but because I needed to know. The next day, I drove to a small French cafe tucked behind a florist, a place that felt like it belonged to another life. Susan was already there, early as always, her hair pulled back in a way that made her look younger, though the bags under her eyes betrayed her. She smiled, tentative, and slid an envelope across the table. I brought these, she said, her voice soft. Inside were photos, me with braces, covered in science fair glitter, me and Dad in matching flannel pajamas by a Christmas tree, me pouting in a yellow raincoat I hated. She chuckled, pointing at that one. You always despised yellow. I didn't laugh, but I didn't pull away. I watched her, searching for the truth behind her words. She spoke quieter now, her shoulders heavy with something familiar, something like regret. Rachel always had the charm, she said, her eyes not quite meeting mine. I'll admit that. But you had something different. You stayed steady. I was wrong not to see it. I sipped my coffee, letting the silence grow. I wanted to believe her, To feel the warmth of those Sunday pancake mornings again. When we stood to leave, she hugged me, longer than I expected, not tight, not desperate, just long enough to make me pause. As we parted, she whispered, "You deserved so much more from all of us." I drove home in silence, no radio, no phone, just the weight of her words and the ache of hope I hadn't felt in years. But hope is a fragile thing, and truth is heavier. That night, as I reviewed updates from my PR team, daily reports now, thanks to Rachel's smear campaign, an email landed like a stone in my chest. The subject line was cold, FYI, page 6, caption. Attached were snapshots of me and Susan at the cafe, laughing, hugging, captioned, "Estranged daughter reunites with mother for emotional forgiveness lunch." Rachel's name was tagged in the forwarding chain, her signature all over the setup. I stared at the screen, my breath gone. It wasn't real. Susan hadn't come because she missed me, because she saw me. She came because Rachel sent her, because a tearful mother-daughter moment sold better than the messy truth. My fingers hovered over the phone, then moved with a quiet resolve. I blocked Susan's number, no drama, no farewell, just a click that felt like closing a book. I walked to the kitchen, poured a glass of water I didn't drink, and stepped onto the balcony. The city hummed below, indifferent to the thread I'd just cut, the last soft tie to the family I'd once called home. I reached into the cedar box by the lounge chair, pulling out my grandfather William's pocket watch, its cracked face still ticking. I held it tight, the metal warm in my palm, as if it carried his voice, his love, his unshakable belief in me. "You never traded loyalty for leverage," I whispered. "You never sold out your blood." I sat there, the watch in my hand, the city sprawling beneath me. The ache wasn't sharp anymore, just heavy, familiar. They weren't trying to bring me back. They were trying to wear me down, one twist, one betrayal at a time, until I softened, until I folded. But they miscalculated. I don't bend the way they do. I break differently, quiet, clean, and unbreakable. I thought of William, his steady eyes, his lessons whispered over summer evenings. "If the door's locked, build your own damn doorway," he'd told me, his voice rough but warm. I was 6, sitting on his porch, watching fireflies. I didn't understand then, but I did now. He'd seen me when no one else had, believed in me when I was just a quiet girl with too many books and not enough spotlight. I closed my eyes, the memory vivid, his words a lifeline. I saw him teaching me to fish, patient as I fumbled with the rod, telling me strength wasn't in the catch but in the waiting. I saw him at my grandmother's funeral, his hand on my shoulder as I made sure the caterer stayed late, his nod saying more than words ever could. He'd left me more than a watch, more than a hotel. He'd left me a truth, I was enough. And Rachel's schemes, Susan's staged tears, couldn't take that away. I set the watch down, my resolve hardening. They thought they could rewrite me, but I was done being their story. I'd write my own, not with their noise, but with my silence, my strength. The gala, the folder, Nathan, the cafe, they weren't the end. They were the spark. I wasn't here to beg for their table. I'd built my own, and it was time they saw it. Time the world saw it. I wasn't invisible anymore, and I wasn't afraid to stand tall. The weight of Susan's betrayal, staged for cameras, didn't crush me. It clarified everything. Rachel's schemes, Nathan's manipulation, the folder at the gala, they weren't just attacks, they were proof. My family didn't want me at their table, not because I wasn't enough, but because I was too much. Too steady, too quiet, too unwilling to bend to their script. I'd spent years building my own world, and now, it was time to claim it. Not with anger, not with revenge, but with the truth I'd carried all along. The truth my grandfather William saw when no one else did. I woke to a city still asleep, the skyline soft with amber light. An email from my communications director confirmed the ballroom was ready for the Legacy and Leadership Women of the Year event. I hadn't planned to speak, hadn't even RSVP'd. But something shifted after that cafe, after Susan's hug turned to headlines. I showered, slipped into simple slacks and a white blouse, no labels, no pretense. I wasn't going to prove anything. I was going to reclaim something, myself, my story, the legacy William left me. I drove to the Grand Ivory, my hotel, my foundation, feeling the weight of every step I'd taken to get here. The lobby buzzed with preparations, blush roses in crystal vases, gold-trimmed signs listing honorees. Rachel's name was on the program, but I'd heard she'd withdrawn, her absence a silent admission after her PR stunt backfired. I walked past the registration table, past women clinking coffee cups, past reporters who didn't glance my way. I didn't need their eyes. I pushed open the ballroom's double doors, the space vast and expectant, and headed for the podium. No introduction, no cue, just me. The mic clicked on, and the room fell still, 100 faces turning, some familiar, some strangers, all waiting. I took a breath, my voice steady, not loud, but clear. I wasn't on the list of speakers today, I began, but I own this building. I built the foundation under your feet. And today, I need to speak, not for applause, but for clarity. A murmur rippled through the crowd, soft but electric. I didn't pause. I want to thank the people who taught me how to stand here. My hotel staff, who work harder than any spotlight could show. Mentors, who saw what my family didn't. And my grandfather, William Harper, who told me, if the door's locked, build your own damn doorway. The room was silent now, every eye locked on me. I let the quiet sit, let it speak. Years ago, they called me the invisible daughter, I said, my voice unwavering. Left off dinner lists, Christmas cards, family stories. I wasn't loud enough, glamorous enough, useful enough. So they pretended I didn't exist. A woman in the third row blinked hard, her hand tightening on her purse. Another glanced at her phone, unsure if she should record. I kept going, my gaze sweeping the room. I worked quietly, relentlessly. I built something they couldn't erase, not this hotel, not my name, not my truth. I leaned closer to the mic, my words deliberate. I didn't rise to punish anyone. I rose because being erased taught me who I never want to become. Legacy isn't a title or a last name. It's who you lift, who you protect when no one's watching, how you use power when silence is easier. I stepped back, the stillness in the room heavy, alive, like we'd all remembered something we'd tried to forget. A young intern, her volunteer badge crooked, pressed her hand to her heart, her eyes shining with tears. "Thank you," she whispered, barely audible, but it landed like a spark. I walked out, no one stopping me, the hallway cool against the heat of the moment. By the time I reached my suite, my phone was alive. A reporter in the second row had posted the speech online, and it was spreading, Twitter, LinkedIn, news blogs. Headlines bloomed, "The Invisible Daughter Speaks, Strength in Silence." A former partner of Rachel's, who once called me non-essential, asked to meet. A major investor, long in Rachel's corner, issued a statement, "Leadership isn't appearances. It's integrity." Emily Harper embodies both. My father sent a message, short and passive, I watched. "I'm processing." Rachel tweeted, cryptic and sharp, "Some weaponize pain, others heal." She didn't tag me, but the world knew. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. The truth was out, and it was mine. But the real victory came days later, in a cream-colored envelope delivered by a tired courier. The gold wax seal bore the Harper crest, my grandfather's design. Inside was his will, notarized years before he died, and a letter in his handwriting. "Kiddo," it began, the nickname a warmth I hadn't felt in years. "If they're reading this, they didn't honor your place. So I did." My name stood alone at the top, sole successor to his estate, his hotels, his legacy. "You were quiet when they shouted," he wrote. "You stayed when they left. You weren't meant to outshine them, you were meant to outlast them." I gripped the pages, my eyes burning, not from triumph, but from being seen. "You were never invisible to me," he ended, the words underlined twice. I sent an email to the board, calm and final, "I'm assuming full control of all Harper entities, effective immediately. No hard feelings, just new terms." The response was swift, legal acknowledgement, then silence. Rachel didn't reply. My mother sent a photo album from that staged lunch, a sticky note inside, do what he would have done. Led well. I set it aside, unopened. Months later, I stood by the fountain at Willow Haven, now renamed Harper Grace, my grandfather's full name. No sleek rebrands, just truth. A bronze plaque gleamed by the entrance, etched with my words from the speech, "We rise not to be seen, but to be remembered." Guests passed, some stopping to read, most walking on. That was fine. I wasn't here for them. I was here for William, for the quiet he'd taught me to trust, for the strength he'd seen before I knew it was mine. The world could keep its noise. I had my peace, and it was enough. Standing by the fountain at Harper Grace, the hotel I'd renamed for my grandfather William, I felt a quiet I hadn't known I needed. The water shimmered under the morning light, its soft ripple a contrast to the storm I'd weathered. The Gala, Rachel's cruel words, Susan's staged tears, Nathan's betrayal, they'd all tried to erase me, to make me small again. But they didn't. They couldn't. Because I'd learned something they never understood: family isn't just who you're born to. It's who sees you when you're invisible, who believes in you when the world turns away. I thought back to William, his steady hands teaching me to fish, his voice telling me strength was in the waiting, not the catch. He saw me when I was just a quiet girl, lost in books, overlooked at family dinners. He left me more than hotels, more than a name. He left me a truth: my worth wasn't tied to their approval. Rachel wanted the spotlight, Susan wanted the script, but I wanted something else: peace, the kind you build when you stop begging for a seat and start crafting your own table. Every betrayal, every dismissal, taught me that. When Rachel mocked me as too poor at the Grand Ivory, she thought she was writing my story's end. She didn't know I'd already rewritten the beginning. When Susan hugged me for the cameras, I learned that love can't be staged, but strength can be chosen. And when I stood at that podium, speaking my truth to a room of strangers, I realized legacy isn't about being loud. It's about being true. William knew that. He built Harper Grace not for fame, but for permanence, for the people who'd walk through its doors and feel seen. I used to think I needed their validation, my family's nods, their invitations, their pride. But standing here, watching the fountain's water catch the light, I know better. Validation comes from within, from the choices you make when no one's watching, from the courage to keep going when the world says stop. I built Ivory Legacy hotels not to prove them wrong, but to prove myself right. And in every brick, every guest smile, every quiet moment, I found what they couldn't give me: a home, not in their circle, but in my own heart. You don't need to be loud to be powerful. You don't need a stage to shine. Power is in the steady steps, the choices that stack like stones until you've built something unbreakable. Betrayal taught me that. It taught me to trust my own voice, to honor my own path. And if I can do that, if I can rise from being called invisible to standing tall in a world I shaped, then so can you. Your story, your pain, your quiet strength, it's enough. It's everything. I'm still here, not for their applause, but for the peace William showed me was possible. Harper Grace stands as a testament to that, its plaque gleaming with words I spoke not for fame, but for truth: we rise not to be seen, but to be remembered. So rise. Build your doorway. Find the people who see you, who lift you, who remind you that you're never invisible. And if you've ever felt erased, know this: your legacy starts the moment you choose yourself. I want to hear your stories. In the comments, share how you've risen above, how you've built your own table. Let's remind each other that we're not alone, that our strength is real, that our voices matter. Because this isn't just my story, it's ours. And together, we'll keep rising, not for the spotlight, but for the truth we carry inside.